There was a time when respect between a husband and wife meant something. There was a time when a man would stand beside his woman and lift her up, not tear her down. But what happened on the stage of Family Feud in February 2024 would test that belief in the worst possible way. When a husband decided to humiliate his own wife on national television, Steve Harvey did something no one expected. He stopped the game. He looked the man dead in the eye. And he said what millions of viewers were already thinking. What happened next left the entire studio audience on their feet, and it proved that sometimes, standing up for what is right matters more than any game. If stories like this move you, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now. We bring you the most powerful moments from Family Feud every single week, and trust me, you do not want to miss what is coming next. The Morales family from Houston, Texas, stepped onto the Family Feud stage looking like the perfect American family. There were 5 of them standing behind the podium. 2 brothers, a cousin, a family friend, and the team captain, 38-year-old Marco Morales. Marco was a big man with a loud voice and a personality that demanded attention. He walked onto the stage like he owned the place, waving to the crowd and flexing for the cameras before the game even started. On the other side of the stage stood the Delgado family from Phoenix, Arizona. Their team captain was a 35-year-old woman named Rosa Delgado. Rosa was quieter than Marco. She stood with her shoulders pulled in slightly, her smile warm but careful. She wore a simple navy blue dress and a small gold cross around her neck that had belonged to her mother. Her teammates were her 2 sisters, her teenage daughter Camilla and her best friend from church, a woman named Linda who had been by her side through the hardest years of her life. What most people in the audience did not know was that Rosa and Marco were actually married. They had been together for 14 years. They had 3 children, but their marriage had been falling apart for years. Marco had always been the kind of man who needed to be the center of attention. At family gatherings, he was always the loudest person in the room. At his children's school events, he made everything about himself. And over time, Rosa had become quieter and quieter, shrinking into the background of her own life. Rosa had grown up in a small town outside of Phoenix. Her parents were Mexican immigrants who had come to the United States with almost nothing. Her father worked 2 jobs as a janitor and a weekend landscaper. Her mother cleaned houses during the day and took in sewing at night. They sacrificed everything so that Rosa and her sisters could have a better life. Rosa's mother used to tell her that a woman's strength was not in how loud she could speak, but in how firmly she could stand. That lesson had carried Rosa through some very dark years. Rosa had married Marco when she was just 21 years old. Back then, he was charming and funny and full of big plans. He told her he would give her the world. And for the first couple of years, things were good. But slowly over time, the charm turned into control. The humor turned into put-downs. Marco started making comments about Rosa's cooking, her appearance, her intelligence. He would say things in front of friends and family that made everyone uncomfortable, and then he would laugh it off like it was nothing. Rosa's mother saw what was happening. She pulled Rosa aside one Christmas Eve and said, "Mija, love is not supposed to make you smaller. Love is supposed to make you grow." Rosa never forgot those words, but she also did not know how to leave. She had 3 children, she had no degree, and Marco controlled the money. The Family Feud appearance had actually been Marco's idea. He had applied on his own, putting together a team of his brothers and friends. Rosa only found out about it when the producers called to confirm the details. She was hurt but not surprised. What she did not expect was that the producers would suggest having the married couple compete against each other on separate teams. They thought it would make for great television. Marco had agreed immediately, thinking it would be funny to beat his wife on national television. Rosa had hesitated for days. She almost said no. But then her sister Maria called and said, "Rosa, this is your chance to show the kids who their mother really is. We will be right beside you." So Rosa called her other sister, her daughter Camilla, and her best friend Linda. She figured that no matter what happened on that stage, at least she would be surrounded by people who truly loved her. She packed the gold cross her mother had given her, said a quiet prayer, and got on the plane to Los Angeles. The game started off normally enough. Steve Harvey came out with his usual energy, cracking jokes and getting the audience warmed up. He introduced both families and immediately noticed the dynamic. "Hold on," Steve said, looking back and forth between the 2 podiums. "You 2 are married, and you're playing against each other?" The audience laughed. Marco jumped in before Rosa could speak. "That's right, Steve, and I'm about to show her how a real winner plays." He said it with a grin, but there was something sharp underneath the humor. Rosa smiled politely but said nothing. The first round went to the Morales family. Marco celebrated like he had just won the Super Bowl. He chest-bumped his brothers and pointed at Rosa from across the stage. "See that, baby? That's how it's done." The audience gave a mixed reaction. Some people laughed. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Between rounds, Steve walked over to Rosa's side of the stage to chat with her family. He asked Rosa what she did for a living. Rosa explained that she worked as a teaching assistant at an elementary school during the day and took online classes at night. She was trying to finish her degree in education so that she could become a full-time teacher. She had been working on that degree for 6 years, taking 1 or 2 classes at a time because that was all she could afford. Steve asked her why it was taking so long. Rosa paused. She looked over at Marco, then back at Steve. "It's just been hard to find the time and the money," she said quietly. "But I'm almost there. 2 more semesters." Her sister Maria, standing behind her, put a hand on Rosa's shoulder and squeezed. There was clearly more to the story, but Rosa was not the kind of person who aired her problems in public. The second round began, and this time the question was one that Steve asked directly to both team captains during the face-off. Name something a wife wishes her husband would do more often. Rosa hit the buzzer first. She looked at Steve and said, "Listen." The answer was on the board. Number 2 answer, 24 points. The audience clapped, but what happened next changed the entire tone of the episode. Marco, standing at his podium, laughed loudly and said, Listen to what? She never says anything worth listening to." He said it like it was a joke. He was grinning. His brothers laughed, but the studio audience went dead silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming in the rafters. Rosa's face did not change, but her daughter Camilla, standing behind her, looked down at the floor. It was the look of a child who had heard those words too many times before. Steve paused. He looked at Marco for a long moment. Then he looked at Rosa. Then he looked at the audience. The producers could feel the energy in the room shifting. This was no longer a game. Steve chose not to respond in that moment. He moved the game forward, but his body language had changed. He was no longer joking around. He was watching. Rosa's team won the second round. Her answers were thoughtful and precise. Every time she spoke, she looked at her sisters for encouragement. They cheered for her with genuine love. On the other side, Marco grew increasingly frustrated. He started snapping at his own teammates when they gave wrong answers. His competitive nature was turning ugly, and it was happening on live television. The third round was the breaking point. The question was, name something a person does that shows they don't respect their partner. Marco buzzed in first and said, "Ignore them." The answer was on the board. But then Marco turned to the audience and added, "But sometimes they deserve to be ignored, am I right, fellas?" He laughed at his own comment. Nobody else did. Steve Harvey set his card down on the podium. He did not read the next question. He stood completely still for about 5 seconds, which felt like an eternity on television. The audience knew something was about to happen. The camera operators adjusted their angles. The producers in the control room held their breath. Rosa's best friend Linda, who was standing at the end of the line on Rosa's team, spoke up. She did not shout. She did not make a scene. She simply said, loud enough for the microphones to pick up, "Rosa, you don't have to stand here and take this." The audience began to murmur. Rosa's eyes filled with tears, but she did not let them fall. She straightened her back. She touched the gold cross around her neck, and she waited. That was when Camilla, Rosa's 16-year-old daughter, did something that broke every heart in the studio. She stepped forward from behind her mother, took Rosa's hand, and held it. She did not say a word. She just held her mother's hand and stood beside her. It was the simplest gesture in the world, and it was the most powerful thing anyone had seen on that stage all day. Steve Harvey walked out from behind his podium. He walked past the cameras. He walked right up to Marco Morales and stood in front of him. The studio went completely silent. Not a cough, not a whisper, nothing. "Let me tell you something," Steve said, his voice low and steady. "I have been doing this show for a long time. I have seen thousands of families stand on this stage. I have seen people argue. I have seen people cry. I have seen people say stupid things because the cameras make them nervous. I get all of that. But what I will not stand for, what I will never be okay with, is a man disrespecting his wife on my stage and calling it a joke." The audience was completely still. You could hear the hum of the stage lights. Steve continued. "I grew up watching my mother get talked down to. I watched my grandmother hold her head high when people tried to make her feel like she was nothing. And I made a promise to myself a long time ago that if I ever had a platform, I would use it to stand up for people who could not stand up for themselves. Today, I am keeping that promise." Marco tried to interrupt. "Steve, come on, man, I was just playing around. She knows I'm—" Steve held up his hand. "No, sir, I'm talking right now. You have been talking all day. You have been talking over your wife, talking about your wife, and talking down to your wife. And every single person in this building saw it. So right now, in this moment, you are going to be quiet and you are going to listen. Because that woman over there deserves to be heard." The audience erupted in applause. Steve waited for it to die down, then continued. "That woman over there," Steve said, pointing at Rosa, has been standing on this stage with more grace and dignity than most people could manage on their best day. She is working a job, going to school at night, raising your children, and she came here today to play a game and have fun. And you have spent the entire time trying to make her feel small. That is not what a husband does. That is not what a man does. The audience rose to their feet. The applause was thunderous. Rosa's sisters were crying. Linda had her arms wrapped around Camilla. Rosa herself stood perfectly still, tears streaming down her face, but she was standing tall. For the first time in a long time, someone had said out loud what she had been feeling for years. Steve turned to Rosa. He walked across the stage and stood directly in front of her. "Rosa, I want you to hear me. You are not invisible. You are not unimportant. And you do not deserve to be talked to like that. Not on this stage, not at home, not anywhere. Do you understand me?" Rosa nodded, and the tears she had been holding back finally came. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Camilla wrapped her arms around her mother. Maria and her other sister closed in from both sides. The four of them stood together in a circle of love and protection that made the entire audience cry. Steve then did something unprecedented. He turned to the producers and said, "We're going to take a break. And when we come back, Rosa's team is going to play fast money. They've earned it." It was not how the game was supposed to work. The rules said the winning family of the final round would go to fast money. But Steve Harvey made a decision based on something more important than the rules. He made a decision based on what was right. Marco stood at his podium, silent for the first time all day. His brothers were looking at the floor. Nobody on his team said a word. The audience was not angry at him. They were not booing, they were simply done with him. And sometimes being ignored is worse than being yelled at. When the show came back from break, Rosa walked up to the fast money podium. Her daughter Camilla had gone first and scored 126 points. Rosa needed 74 points to win the $20,000 prize. Steve stood beside her and spoke quietly just for her. "You've got this. Play for your kids, play for yourself. You deserve this." Rosa nodded. She closed her eyes for a moment and touched the gold cross at her neck. Then she placed her hands on the podium, and for the next 20 seconds she answered every question with calm, focused precision. She did not rush. She did not panic. She spoke clearly, the way her mother had always told her to speak. When the answers were revealed one by one, the audience cheered louder with each correct response. She had scored 91 points. The family total was 217. They had won the $20,000. The celebration was not loud or flashy. It was pure. Rosa and her sisters held each other and cried. Camilla jumped up and down, screaming with joy, tears running down her face. Linda fell to her knees right there on the stage and bowed her head in prayer, thanking God for the moment. Even the crew members behind the cameras were wiping their eyes. It was not just about the money. Everyone in that studio understood what was really happening. A woman who had been told for years that she was not good enough had just proven in front of the entire country that she was more than enough. She had always been enough. After the taping ended, Steve Harvey did something he rarely did. He walked off stage and went directly to Rosa and her family in the green room. He sat down with them for almost 30 minutes. He talked to Rosa about her dreams of becoming a teacher. He talked to Camilla about school. He asked Maria about the family and what kind of support Rosa needed. The cameras were not rolling. No one was filming. Steve did it because he genuinely cared. Before the family left the studio, Steve pulled Rosa aside and told her something that she later shared in an interview. He said, "You are the strongest person I have met on this show, and I need you to know that your children are watching you. They see everything. The way you carry yourself, the way you refuse to be broken, that is what they are going to remember. Not the game, not the money. You." Rosa said those words changed her life. When the episode aired 6 weeks later, it became the most talked about Family Feud episode of the entire season. The clip of Steve confronting Marco went viral within hours. It was shared millions of times on social media. News outlets picked it up. Talk shows discussed it. People who had never watched Family Feud in their lives were watching this clip and sharing it with their friends and families. But the real impact was quieter and more personal. Thousands of women reached out to Rosa through social media, telling her that they had been in similar situations. They told her that watching her stand with dignity on that stage gave them the courage to stand up for themselves. Teachers, counselors, and domestic abuse organizations shared the clip as an example of how emotional abuse can happen in plain sight, and how important it is for communities to speak up. Rosa used the $20,000 to pay off the remaining tuition for her teaching degree. She took a full course load for the first time in 6 years. She studied at the kitchen table after her children went to bed. Her sisters took turns watching the kids on weekends so she could go to the library and finish her assignments. 8 months after the episode aired, Rosa graduated with a Bachelor of Education degree from Arizona State University. Her 3 children, her 2 sisters, Linda, and 6 of Rosa's fellow students sat in the front row at the ceremony. When Rosa's name was called and she walked across the stage, her daughter Camilla stood up and cheered so loud that people 10 rows back turned around to look. Rosa held her diploma in one hand and her mother's gold cross in the other. She later said that was the proudest moment of her life. She got a job teaching 3rd grade at a bilingual elementary school in Phoenix. Her students loved her. Their parents respected her. And every single day she went to work knowing that she had earned her place. Nobody had given it to her. She had worked for it. As for Marco, the public backlash was swift and harsh. He deleted his social media accounts within days of the episode airing. People who knew him said the experience had been a wake-up call. His own mother called him after the episode and told him she was ashamed of how he had treated Rosa on national television. Several months after the episode, Rosa filed for divorce. She said in a later interview that it was not the show that made her leave. It was the fact that for the first time she realized she did not have to accept being treated that way. Steve Harvey's words had given her permission to believe what she had always known deep down, that she deserved better. The divorce was finalized quietly. Rosa did not ask for much. She wanted the children, she wanted peace, and she wanted a fresh start. She got all 3. 1 year after the episode, Family Feud invited Rosa back for a special Where Are They Now segment. She walked onto the stage in a beautiful red dress, her teaching ID badge still clipped to her purse because she had come straight from school. She was a different woman, not because she had changed who she was, but because she had finally become who she was always meant to be. She was confident. She was smiling. She was free. The audience recognized her the moment she stepped out, and the applause was immediate and genuine. Several audience members stood before she even reached center stage. Steve Harvey hugged her like she was family. He asked her how she was doing, and Rosa told him and the audience about her teaching career, about her children thriving in school, about her new apartment that she and the kids had decorated together over a weekend with paint and second-hand furniture and a lot of laughter. She told them about how her oldest son had made the honor roll for the first time and how her youngest had started playing soccer. She told them about the small support group she had started at her church for women in difficult marriages. Every Wednesday night, 10 to 15 women would gather in the church fellowship hall and talk. Some of them cried. Some of them laughed. Some of them just sat quietly and listened, grateful to be in a room where they were not judged. Rosa did not give advice. She just listened, because she knew from experience that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone is to let them know they are heard. The group had grown so much that other churches in the area had started their own versions, all inspired by what Rosa had built. Steve turned to the camera and spoke directly to the viewers at home. I want everyone watching to understand something. What happened on this stage last year was not entertainment. It was real life. There are millions of people out there right now who are being made to feel small by someone who is supposed to love them. And I need you to hear me. You are not small, you are not invisible, and you do not have to accept it. Rosa taught me that. She taught all of us that. Rosa's daughter Camilla, now 17, had started volunteering with a youth mentorship program at her high school. She spent her Saturday mornings working with younger girls from difficult home situations, helping them with homework and just being someone they could talk to. When a local newspaper asked Camilla what had inspired her to volunteer, she said it was watching her mother stand on that stage and refuse to be broken. My mom is the strongest person I know, Camilla said. She showed me that you don't have to yell or fight to be powerful. You just have to know your worth and never let anyone take it from you. The article ran with a photo of Camilla and Rosa standing together outside their apartment, both of them smiling. Rosa had it framed and hung it on the wall next to Camilla's honor roll certificates. Steve Harvey spoke about that episode many times in interviews afterward. He said it was one of the moments that reminded him why he still hosted Family Feud after all these years. People think this show is just about funny answers and silly questions, he said in one interview. And a lot of times it is, but every once in a while something real happens on that stage, something that matters. Rosa Delgado mattered, her story mattered, and I would stop 1,000 games to stand up for someone like her. That is not even a question for me. He also said that the moment Camilla took her mother's hand was the single most powerful thing he had ever witnessed on his show. That little girl did not say a word, Steve said. She just held her mother's hand, and in that one gesture she said everything. She said, I see you, I love you, I am with you. That is what family is supposed to look like. The gold cross that Rosa wore around her neck on the day of the taping still hangs around her neck every single day. Her mother gave it to her on her wedding day and told her that it would protect her during hard times. Rosa says her mother was right. But she also says that real protection does not come from jewelry or luck. It comes from the people who love you enough to stand beside you when the world is trying to push you down. Her sisters, her daughter, her friend Linda, and a television host named Steve Harvey who decided that being a good man mattered more than being a good game show host. The story of Rosa Delgado and what happened on the Family Feud stage that day has been viewed over 50 million times across social media platforms. It has been discussed in classrooms, at church sermons, and around kitchen tables across the country. Domestic abuse organizations use the clip in training sessions to show how emotional abuse can look in everyday life and how bystanders can step in. A women's shelter in Phoenix renamed their annual fundraiser, the Rosa Gala, in her honor. Rosa attended every year, sitting quietly in the back, never wanting the spotlight but always willing to share her story if it meant helping someone else find the courage to leave a bad situation. It is a story about respect. It is a story about dignity. It is a story about a mother who refused to let her children grow up thinking that love looked like cruelty. And it is a story about what happens when good people refuse to stay silent in the face of someone else's pain. Rosa often says that she did not go on Family Feud to make a statement. She went because her sister told her it was time to stop being invisible. She went because her daughter needed to see what it looked like when a woman stood her ground. And she went because somewhere deep inside, underneath all the years of being told she was not enough, she still believed that she was. If this story touched your heart, do me a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another video like this. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today, because sometimes one story can change a life. And maybe, just maybe, this is that story for someone you love. We will see you in the next one.